Every skyscraper has blueprints, every blockbuster has a director, and, every single successful tech innovation, from the apps right there on your phone to the huge networks powering global commerce, has something just as vital.
IT project management.
Exactly. Without it, honestly, the world's most ambitious ideas, they just collapse before they even get off the ground.
Yeah, it's really the essential scaffolding, isn't it, for like any modern organizational strategy. And when you look at why IT projects fail, well, the numbers are pretty sobering.
I saw that PMI statistic. It's staggering.
It is. The Project Management Institute estimates something like $1.5 million is wasted every minute globally. Just poof, gone because of poor project performance.
Wow. Every minute.
Yeah. That worked out to about 11.4% of all business investment just evaporating.
Right.
And that staggering failure rate, it tells us one thing loud and clear.
What's that?
The digital world doesn't succeed by accident. Yeah. It succeeds because of rigorous IT project management. It really does.
And that's exactly what we're digging into today. This is our deep dive, focused on the discipline that kind of stitches all the project activities together, project integration management.
Right, PIM. It's the core knowledge area. It coordinates everything else, making sure you actually move from like a vague strategic goal to a clear executable roadmap.
So if you're looking to really elevate your game in IT project success, maybe you're working on a massive enterprise system, or maybe you're synthesizing these ideas for your graduate work, like in BCIS 5351, and this roadmap we're laying out, it's for you.
We're definitely looking at the foundational techniques here, focusing on how you turn those ideas into real-world impact by building and executing a really solid plan. For those of you, studying the mechanics, maybe think about Knowledge Outcome 2 or KO2. Pay close attention to how these concepts really connect that high-level strategy, KO2, to the actual execution techniques, which is more like KO3.
Got it. Okay, settle in, everyone. We're about to unpack the essential steps for mastering project integration. Everything from picking the right project strategically all the way through managing execution rigorously.
It's going to be good.
And hey, if you want to follow along with the source material we're using for this deep dive, just check the description below. We've got links and resources there for you. Like, follow, share, you know the drill. Helps us out a lot.
Okay, so project integration management, or PI, it's often the biggest hurdle for a new project manager.
How so?
Well, think about it. When they were technical specialists, maybe a coder, a network engineer, a security analyst, their focus was super narrow, just their specific deliverable.
Right, get my part done.
Exactly. PIM forces them to pivot. Suddenly, they have to look at the entire project, like as a whole integrated system, balancing all those competing demands, all the different knowledge areas. It's a huge shift.
Yeah, that transition from specialist to integrator, that sounds pretty daunting. You have to stop being the best coder and start being the best coordinator.
Precisely. You nailed it. They have to go from focusing on their one tree to making sure the entire forest is healthy. And not just healthy, but strategically aligned and critically financially viable.
Okay, so before a PM can even worry about, like, Gantt charts and tasks?
Right. Before any of that, the organization itself has to make sure they're working on the right project in the first place. Project success literally begins with strategic selection.
That makes sense. The IT projects have to actually support the business objectives, right? Not just be cool tech for tech's sake.
Absolutely. Unquestionably. And the genesis of any project, usually falls into one of three categories. These are kind of the non-financial reasons we start projects.
Okay, what are they?
First, you might be addressing existing problems. Think like an old legacy system that's causing tons of errors or costing a fortune to maintain.
Right. Undesirable situations you need to fix.
Exactly. Second, you could be exploiting new opportunities. Maybe developing a mobile app to reach a whole new customer base you couldn't before.
Okay, chasing growth.
Yep. And third, sometimes you're just responding to directives. These can come from management internally or sometimes from external forces like regulators.
Can you give us a solid example of one of those directive projects, something that might not look profitable up front but is totally necessary?
Oh, sure. Healthcare is a perfect example. Imagine a new IA regulation comes out mandating a specific higher level of encryption and, let's say, stricter auditing for all patient data systems.
Okay.
Building the system or upgrading the existing one to meet that. That's not directly generating profit. It's a compliance project. But if you don't do it...
huge fines, legal trouble, bad PR.
Massive fines, legal risk, reputational damage, you name it.
So these projects often get categorized broadly as strategic, operational, or compliance related. And those directives, they often land squarely in compliance. non-negotiable. Okay, so you've identified maybe several potential projects based on these needs. Problems, opportunities, directives. How does an organization pick? Because you could have multiple good ideas competing for limited resources, right? And that's where office politics can really mess things up.
That is precisely where the weighted scoring model becomes so valuable. It's specifically designed to inject objectivity into that decision.
How does it work?
Instead of relying on, the gut feeling of the highest paid person in the room or whoever shouts the loudest, this model forces you to systematically evaluate each project against a set of pre-agreed criteria.
Like what kind of criteria?
Could be anything important to the organization's strategy. You assign numerical weights to these goals. Maybe 40% of the score is based on revenue potential, 30% on risk reduction, 20% on hitting regulatory requirements, and say 10% on technical feasibility.
Okay, I see. So you score each project against those weighted criteria.
Exactly. And the project with the highest overall score based on those weights is the one that objectively aligns best with the stated strategic priorities.
But wait a minute. Couldn't the politics just shift? Like, instead of arguing about which project wins, people just argue about how much weight to give each criterion. My project reduces risk, so risk reduction should be 50%.
Ah, you hit on the strategic challenge and also the genius of the model. Yes, absolutely. The initial political wrangling might shift to negotiating those weights. That's where leadership comes in.
So you need exec buy-in on the weights themselves.
Critically, once those weights are debated, agreed upon, and officially mandated by executive leadership, the decision-making process itself becomes transparent. It's auditable. It shifts the conversation from, I like my project best, to here's how my project scores against the priorities we all agreed on.
Okay, yeah. That makes the whole selection process much more robust, much less about personal preference.
It forces alignment with long-term strategy, not just whoever has the most clout at that moment.
All right, so that covers the strategic fit. Let's pivot to the money side, the financial justification. The best projects, presumably, offer strong financial returns. We need tools to gauge that properly, right?
Yes, and we need tools that look beyond the superficial. A lot of organizations start, and sometimes stop, with the payback period.
Which is just how long it takes to make the initial investment back.
Exactly. It's simple, sure. But relying only on payback, it's like choosing a marathon training plan based only on which one gets you across the finish line fastest, without caring if you permanently injure yourself doing it.
Yeah. Okay, I get that. Why is it so flawed?
Because it completely ignores the time value of money. $1 today is worth more than $1 promised 5 years from now. Payback just doesn't account for that.
And that seems especially bad for big, long-term IT projects, doesn't it? Where you might spend a ton up front, but the benefits, the returns, might be spread out over, like, 5 or 10 years.
Precisely. That's why net present value, or NPV, is the far superior financial tool for evaluation.
Explain NPV for us. How does that work?
Okay, so NPV takes all the expected future cash flows from the project, both the money coming in and the money going out, and it discounts them back to their value today, right now.
Using what? Like an interest rate?
Using a specific discount rate, often called the required rate of return or the hurdle rate. It reflects the organization's minimum acceptable return, considering risk and the opportunity cost of investing elsewhere.
Ah, okay. So it's not just asking, do we make our money back?
No, it's asking, do we make our money back at a rate that justifies the risk we're taking and the other things we could be doing with this money?
That's a much smarter question.
It's strategically critical, especially, as you said, for IT projects with those big upfront costs and long life cycles. NPV makes sure the organization isn't just chasing quick wins, but is actually protecting shareholder value years down the road.
So if the calculated NPV is positive...
If it's a positive, the project is expected to generate value above that minimum acceptable rate. It's adding financial value. If it's negative, it's expected to return less than the hurdle rate.
Got it. So for any serious strategic IT initiative, NPV analysis is really the gold standard for checking that long-term financial health.
Absolutely. It's essential.
Okay, so the strategic selection's done. The numbers, the NPV, they check out. Now we move into the initiation phase, right? Where we formally recognize, oh, this project is a go, and that official birth certificate you mentioned earlier, that's the project charter.
That's it. The charter is the authorization document. It does two main things. Formally recognizes that the project exists, and, crucially, it gives the project manager the authority to start using organizational resources.
Resources like money, people, equipment.
Exactly. Applying those resources to the project activities. Without a signed charter, The PM.
Yeah.
They technically have no formal authority. They can't really proceed, not officially anyway.
So it's kind of the high-level handshake agreement, condensed down, keeps everyone, especially the key stakeholders, aligned on the big picture, right? The why we're doing this, and the high level, what we want to achieve, goals, objectives, maybe a very preliminary scope.
Correct. And this is where we need to be super clear about the difference between the charter and the project management plan. They are not the same thing.
Okay, explain that difference.
The charter is visionary. It might only be a few pages long. Its main job is to secure that initial buy-in and clearly define the PM's authority. Think of it as the elevator pitch that gets the green light.
Right. High-level, authorization, vision.
The project management plan, on the other hand, that's the comprehensive execution roadmap. It's the detailed, granular how.
So, sticking with analogies, if the charter says we're driving from New York to LA and names the driver,
Yeah.
then the plan is the detailed turn-by-turn directions, showing every single highway, every rest stop, maybe even warning about road construction zones along the way.
That's a perfect analogy. Couldn't have said it better. The project management plan is the central document. It's used to coordinate all the other planning documents that come later, and it guides the actual execution and control of the project.
And everyone on the team has to follow it.
It has to be adhered to, strictly. Now, it needs to be a living document, flexible enough to incorporate approved changes, but it provides the baseline that the entire team works from. It's arguably the single most critical document for guiding the project successfully.
Okay. And developing that comprehensive plan, that sounds like where the sheer scope of project integration management really comes into play. It forces the PM to think ahead about everything, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. You have to proactively consider everything that could go right, sure, but maybe more importantly, everything that could potentially go wrong.
That planning takes time and effort, obviously.
A lot of effort.
Yeah.
But that upfront effort is what prevents those nasty, costly surprises during execution. It's an investment.
And it results in more than just one big document, right? You mentioned coordinating other plans.
Exactly. A truly robust project management plan isn't monolithic. It's actually an integration, a collection of many specialized subsidiary plans. To manage integration effectively, you have to develop and incorporate management strategies for, well, it's a list.
Let's hear it.
You need plans for scope management, schedule management, cost management, quality management, resource management, communications management, risk management, procurement management, stakeholder engagement,
Wow, okay. Keep going.
requirements management, change management, and configuration management.
That's a massive list. It really drives home that PI isn't just about managing tasks on a timeline. It's about managing all the complex interdependencies between these specialized areas.
You got it. That's the essence of integration. These subsidiary plans are the proactive part. They force you to anticipate issues and establish formal procedures before you need them.
For example,
Well, like the risk management plan defines how your team will identify, analyze, and respond to risks when they pop up. The change management plan dictates the rigid process for requesting, evaluating, and approving or rejecting any changes to the scope, schedule, or cost baseline.
so when things inevitably happen during execution,
You're not scrambling, trying to invent a process on the fly. You're executing a strategy, a procedure that was already thought through, documented, and agreed upon by the key stakeholders during planning. That's the power of integrated planning.
okay, let's get granular now. You mentioned a structured way to get from that high-level charter vision to a plan that's actually ready for execution. Let's talk about those steps. I think there are 12 key ones. This really seems to hit on the skills needed for managing project phases, like Skill Outcome 2 or SO2.
Absolutely. These steps build the blueprint. So steps 1 and 2 are all about defining the project's boundaries. Step 1 is collecting requirements
Okay. Who do you collect from?
from all the key stakeholders, customers, users, sponsors, technical teams, anyone who has a stake in the outcome. And this step requires exceptional communication skills. Active listening is critical.
Why is it so foundational?
Because if you miss something crucial here, misunderstand what the customer really needs or wants, you'll end up building the wrong thing. Doesn't matter how efficiently you build it later, if it's the wrong thing, the project's a failure.
Okay, so nail the requirements first. What's step 2?
Immediately after gathering requirements, step 2 is define scope. You take those requirements and translate them into a formal scope statement.
What goes in that statement?
It needs to clearly articulate what the project team is supposed to produce or deliver. But just as importantly, maybe even more importantly, it must explicitly state what is out of scope.
Ah, setting the boundaries.
Precisely. If you don't clearly define those boundaries up front, We are building X, we are not building Y and Z. Then the scope will inevitably balloon later. Scope creep is almost guaranteed without a clear out-of-scope section.
Got it. So, boundary set, what comes next? Steps 3 and 4.
Steps 3 and 4 are about breaking down the work. Step 3 is creating the work breakdown structure, the WBS. This is absolutely fundamental to project control.
How does the WBS work?
You take the overall project scope, as defined in the scope statement, and you decompose it, break it down hierarchically into smaller, more manageable components. These lowest level components are often called work packages.
I've heard the WBS confuses people sometimes. How does it differ from just making a big to-do list?
That's a vital distinction for strategic control. The WBS is deliverable-oriented. That means each item in the WBS should describe an output or a tangible piece of work, usually using nouns. Think user authentication module or database schema v1.0.
Not verbs like code the module or test the database.
Exactly. It describes the what, not the how. And there's the 100% rule. The WBS must capture 100% of the work defined in the project scope, every single deliverable. If it's not represented somewhere in the WBS, technically it's not part of the project.
Okay, so the WBS defines all the pieces, and step 4 is?
Step 4 is define activities.
Uh-huh.
Now you figure out the specific actions the verbs needed to actually create each of those deliverables identified in the WBS work packages. Code module, test module, document module. Those are activities.
Okay, that structure makes sense. WBS defines the what. Activities define the how to get the what done. So step 5 must be about timing, sequencing activities.
You got it. Step 5 is sequence activities. You figure out the relationships and dependencies between all those activities you just defined.
Like task B can't start until task A is finished.
Right, that's a classic finish to start dependency. But there are others like start to start, finish to finish. Understanding these is key. But the strategic part here, especially for competitive advantage, is optimizing for parallelism. How many activities can you realistically do at the same time, given your resources, without breaking dependencies? The more you can parallelize effectively, the shorter your overall project schedule becomes. That compresses your time to market.
Which is huge in IT, getting there faster.
Absolutely. Efficient sequencing is a competitive weapon.
All right, now we hit the really tricky part, I bet. Steps 6 and 7, dealing with resource reality. Estimating how long things will take, how much they'll cost, and what resources you need. This feels like where plans often fall apart.
It's definitely where realism, or lack thereof, bites you. Estimation is both an art and a science. For step 6, estimate activity durations and costs. You need to choose the right technique.
What are the options?
Well, you could use a top-down estimate where maybe an executive mandates a timeline or budget based on past similar projects. It's fast but often inaccurate. Or, much better for accuracy, is a bottom-up estimate. You estimate the duration and cost for every single activity defined in step 4, starting from the lowest level, and then you aggregate those estimates upwards through the WBS.
That sounds way more work, but more reliable.
It is. There's also 3-point estimating, where for each activity you estimate an optimistic, best case, a pessimistic, worst case, and a most likely duration or cost. Then you calculate a weighted average, often using a formula like PERT, Program Evaluation and Review Technique.
Why do that? Why not just use the most likely?
Because the 3-point approach explicitly acknowledges and accounts for uncertainty and risk in your estimates. It gives you a more realistic range, not just a single, potentially flawed number pulled out of thin air.
Okay, that makes sense. So you've estimated duration and cost. Step 7 is estimate and acquire resources.
Yep.
What do you actually need to do the work? This is labor people with specific skills. It's materials, it's equipment, it's technology licenses. You need to identify everything.
And just listing them isn't enough, right?
And not even close. For people especially, you have to match the complexity of the activity to the required skill level. Do you need a senior architect, a mid-level developer, or an entry-level tester for this specific task?
And then check if they're actually available.
Critically, you have to look at organizational realities. Are those key people already booked on other projects? Do they have vacations scheduled during your critical path? If your 2 top database admins are both needed 100% of the time for the same 2 weeks, you have a major problem.
So what do? You have to perform resource leveling, adjusting the schedule to smooth out those peaks and valleys of resource demand, maybe delaying non-critical tasks. Or you might need to request more resources, or adjust the scope, or accept that the schedule will slip. Resource allocation isn't just tactical, it's deeply strategic, especially in matrix organizations where you're constantly negotiating for people's time.
Okay, resource reality check done. Step 8 sounds crucial. Contingency planning, basically acknowledging that things will go wrong.
It's the absolute core truth of project management, isn't it? A plan without contingency is a bad plan, period.
So how do you plan for the unexpected?
Well, you use historical data, expert judgment, and thorough risk assessment to identify potential problems before they happen. These are your known unknowns, risks you can anticipate, even if you don't know for sure they'll occur. Like maybe a key vendor has a history of being 10% late on deliveries.
So you build in a buffer.
Exactly. You create contingency reserves, extra time or money, specifically set aside to deal with these identified risks if they materialize. This contingency reserve is for the known unknowns.
Is that different from like a general management reserve?
Yes, absolutely. The management reserve is typically held at a higher level and is meant to cover the unknown unknowns, the truly unforeseen problems, the black swan events that you couldn't reasonably predict during planning. You need to account for both internal risks, like unreliable vendors or staff turnover, and external risks, like sudden regulatory changes, economic downturns, or a competitor making an unexpected move.
Okay, contingency plan. Step 9 brings us back to that integration idea, right? Setting the performance measurement baseline.
Precisely. This is where you formally integrate the final, approved versions of the scope, the schedule, and the cost estimates into one single, cohesive, locked-down baseline.
Lockdown meaning
Meaning, this integrated baseline becomes the official measuring stick for the project. Once execution starts, all performance skews, how much work is done, how much time has passed, how much money has been spent, is measured and reported against this baseline.
so any deviation triggers.
Triggers the control processes, likely including formal change control if the deviation impacts scope, schedule, or cost significantly. The baseline is the control tool.
Gotcha. And then you mentioned steps 10 and 11, basically reiterate developing all those detailed subsidiary plans we talked about earlier, scope plan, cost plan, risk plan, quality plan, et cetera, and making sure everything is thoroughly documented.
Right. It emphasizes that rigorous planning, while demanding, is what prevents chaos later. It avoids misunderstandings, reduces rework, and keeps everyone aligned during the pressures of execution.
Okay, final step, step 12. This one seems forward-looking. Building institutional knowledge.
Yeah, this is about making the organization smarter over time. You absolutely must take the time, usually at the end of the project or key phases, to document and share what went well and what went wrong, the lessons learned.
Why is that so important? It feels like something easily skipped when everyone's tired.
It often is skipped, unfortunately, but doing it transforms individual project experience into reusable organizational capability. The next project manager facing a similar challenge shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel or repeat the same mistakes.
And looking ahead, how might technology change how we capture and use these lessons learned?
Well, the sources we looked at suggest artificial intelligence and machine learning are really starting to make inroads here.
How so?
Think about all the unstructured data a project generates: meeting minutes, emails, chat logs, bug reports, status updates. AI and ML tools are getting better at analyzing all that text, structuring it, and extracting actionable insights automatically.
So instead of relying on someone remembering to write a good lessons learned report,
The system could potentially identify patterns, correlate issues with outcomes, and surface relevant historical insights to current project teams much more effectively. It could help organizations actually use their past performance data to reduce future failures in a more automated way. That's pretty exciting.
all right, so we've navigated those 12 planning steps. We have the blueprint, the integrated baseline, the subsidiary plans. Now we shift gears into the longest, usually most resource-heavy phase, project execution and control. This is where the actual product or service gets built, tested, and eventually handed over.
Exactly. And this phase doesn't just drift into starting, it kicks off formally with the project kickoff meeting.
Is that just a formality, a team lunch?
Absolutely not. It's mission critical. The PM must use this meeting effectively. It's the chance to orient everyone, especially new team members, review all those key planning outputs we just discussed: the charter, the scope statement, the WBS, the schedule and cost baselines, the risk management approach.
Why rehash all that? Didn't they see it during planning?
Some might have, some might not have. Or they might have forgotten details. The goal of the kickoff is to ensure consistent understanding across the entire team before the real work begins. Everyone needs to be crystal clear on the integrated plan, the goals, their specific roles, responsibilities, and how progress will be tracked and reported. alignment is key.
Okay, kickoff done, alignment achieved. Now execution is underway. What's a PM's main focus day to day?
Continuous management of the quadruple constraints. You'll often hear this called CSSQ: cost, scope, schedule, and quality.
The four legs of the stool, right?
That's a great way to put it. They are inextricably linked. You can't pull on one, say, try to drastically cut costs without impacting the others, like schedule or quality. The PM's job is to constantly monitor and balance all four.
Let's break those down. Managing scope and change control first. This seems like where projects often go off the rails with scope creep.
It's a huge danger zone. The PM has two primary responsibilities here. First, ensure the team produces all the work required by the baseline scope. Second, and just as critically, ensure they produce only the required work. Nothing extra.
No gold plating, no adding cool features just because a developer thought of them?
Precisely. Any deviation from that baseline scope, no matter how small it seems, constitutes a change. And every single change must go through the formal change control process that was defined back in the planning phase.
Okay, I get the need for control, especially on big changes.
Wait.
But what about tiny tweaks? Doesn't forcing every little thing through a formal process just grind everything to a halt? Where's the balance between control and agility?
That is the fundamental tension, the art of project integration management. You absolutely must maintain rigidity to protect that baseline, otherwise scope, cost, and schedule spiral out of control. But you're right, the process itself needs to be efficient enough that it doesn't become a bureaucratic nightmare that stifles necessary adjustments or valid improvements.
So the process itself matters.
Hugely. A good change control process clearly defines: how is a potential change identified? Who can initiate a formal change request? What information must be included in that request?
And then the analysis part.
Crucially, how is the requested change analyzed for its potential impact on all four constraints: cost, scope, schedule, and quality? And finally, who has the authority, usually a change control board or CCB, to approve or reject the request based on that impact analysis?
Can you walk through that impact analysis? Let's say someone wants to add a seemingly minor new feature.
Okay. The PM, or someone designated, has to analyze it thoroughly. Adding this feature, that's a scope increase. Does it require, say, an extra week of development and testing? That's a schedule impact.
Right.
Does it require bringing in a specialist database consultant for 3 days because the current team lacks expertise? That's a cost impact.
Okay.
And maybe adding this feature complicates the user interface in a way that might negatively affect usability or user satisfaction. That's a potential quality impact.
So the analysis presents all those trade-offs.
Yes. The analysis forecasts the ripple effects across CSSQ. Then the CCB, which typically includes key stakeholders, the project sponsor, maybe senior managers, looks at that analysis and makes the strategic decision. Is the benefit of this change worth the projected impacts on cost, schedule, and quality?
And the PM's role in execution here
is to facilitate that process and, critically, to never allow the team to execute a change, no matter how small, unless and until it has gone through the process and received all the required approval signatures, confirming everyone understands and accepts the forecasted CSSQ impacts. Enforce the process.
Okay, that's scope and change control. Moving to the CSA for cost. Managing the project budget, how does the PM track financial performance beyond just, like, collecting receipts?
It's about comparing actual spending against the plan. They track all expenditures, labor hours, equipment rentals, material purchases, everything against that approved cost baseline, and they monitor key financial metrics.
Such as?
Well, first is the total current budget. That's the original baseline budget plus the cost impact of any approved changes. It's the current official spending limit.
Okay.
Then they calculate the forecast total. This is the actual money spent to date, plus a realistic estimate of the money needed to complete the remaining project work, often called the estimate to complete, or ETC.
And the difference between those two?
The difference between the total current budget and the forecast total gives you the project variance at completion. If the forecast total is higher than the current budget, you have a negative variance you're forecasting an overrun. If it's lower, you have a positive variance forecasting an underrun.
But just knowing the number we're $50 over budget isn't enough, right?
Not at all. That's just the symptom. The PM needs to constantly analyze the root cause of that variance. Why are we over or under? This is often done using formal earned value management, EVM techniques, even if simplified.
What kind of causes might you find?
Maybe junior developers took significantly longer to complete tasks than originally estimated. That's a labor efficiency issue.
Yeah.
Or perhaps the cost of a key raw material suddenly spiked due to market conditions. That's an external factor. Or maybe You're under budget because a planned risk didn't materialize, and you haven't spent the contingency reserve.
So understanding the why is crucial.
Because only then can the PM take proactive, targeted corrective action. Do we need more training? Do we need to renegotiate with a supplier? Do we need to request a scope reduction to get back on budget? You can't fix the problem if you don't understand its source.
Makes sense. Okay, last constraint. Q for quality. How do we make sure quality is being built into the project work, not just inspected at the very end when it's too late or expensive to fix things?
Quality absolutely has to be planned in from the start. The quality standards, the metrics, the acceptance criteria, those should all be defined during the planning phase, often in the quality management plan. Then, during execution, quality control involves actively monitoring the work being done to ensure it's meeting those predefined standards.
Yeah. What are some common tools or techniques for that?
One very effective tool is conducting peer reviews. This is where team members review each other's work products early in their development cycle. For example, one developer reviews another developer's code before it gets integrated.
What's the benefit of that?
It catches defects, errors, inconsistencies, or deviations from standards much earlier in the process, when they're significantly cheaper and faster to fix. Finding a bug in code review is orders of magnitude less expensive than finding it during final system testing, or worse, after deployment.
Okay, peer reviews for early defect detection. What about broader checks?
That's where project audits come in. These are more formal periodic assessments. They might happen at the end of major project phases, for instance.
What do audits look at?
They check if the project team is actually following the established quality assurance processes and procedures defined in the plan. Are the standards being met? Is documentation up to date? A really critical output of project audits is measuring both project team satisfaction and, crucially, customer satisfaction.
Why measure team and customer satisfaction as part of quality?
Because low satisfaction is often an early warning sign. If the team is unhappy or frustrated, it might indicate underlying process problems, resource conflicts, or communication breakdowns that will eventually impact the deliverable quality. And if the customer isn't happy with progress or intermediate deliverables, well, ultimately, the customer is the final judge of whether the project delivered acceptable quality and met their needs. Their satisfaction is paramount.
Got it. Okay, let's wrap this section by revisiting risk. We did all that risk planning earlier. Now, during execution, some of those risks are probably happening.
Right. And the language we use here is important. Back in planning, we identified risks, potential future events that might negatively impact the project.
Okay.
Once one of those potential events actually occurs, it's no longer a risk. It's now an issue. An issue is a current, definite problem or condition that needs to be dealt with now.
So the risk management plan we created
Effectively becomes the starting point for the issue action plan. We already thought about how we might respond if this risk occurred. Now we execute that response or adapt it as merited.
And the PM's job regarding risk during execution
Is threefold. One, constantly monitor the environment for any new risks that weren't identified during planning. Two, reassess the existing identified risks. Has their probability or potential impact changed? And three, rigorously monitor the actual impact of any realized issues on those CSSQ constraints.
And if an issue pops up that significantly threatens the scope, schedule, cost, or quality baseline,
Then that issue likely needs to be formally documented and escalated through the change control process for a strategic decision on how to handle it, potentially requiring adjustments to the baseline itself. It all ties back to that integrated control. So understanding all those detailed execution and control processes, managing CSSQ, handling change, monitoring risk, really allows us to dig into why projects fail. And analyzing failure, evaluating those complex situations, that's a key skill we want learners to develop, aligning with Knowledge Outcome 2, KO2.
Right, because the research is pretty consistent, isn't it? Failures usually aren't because the technology itself didn't work.
Rarely. More often, the root causes trace back to fundamental failures in strategy, integration management, communication, and leadership, not technical execution errors.
Okay, let's start with planning failures. Beyond just, not having a plan, what are the common avoidable flaws you see again and again?
It's often not the complete absence of a plan, but the lack of a detailed reality-based plan. A huge one is insufficient resource allocation. Meaning the plan might say we need 2 senior developers, but nobody actually checked if those 2 developers were available or if they were already 150% allocated to 3 other critical projects. It's planning in a vacuum.
What else?
Insufficient risk assessment is another big one. Overlooking obvious threats, the known unknowns we talked about, or just wishful thinking, assuming everything will go perfectly. And related to that, failing to build in adequate contingency buffers for time and cost.
So the plan is too optimistic from day one.
Exactly. It sets the project up for failure because it lacks the resilience to handle the inevitable bumps in the road. These planning flaws introduce instability that the execution phase simply cannot overcome, no matter how hard the team works.
Okay, that's planning. Another huge category of failure seems to revolve around communication and stakeholders.
Oh, absolutely. This is where you see the classic project black box pitfall.
Explain the black box.
The project team does a decent job gathering initial requirements. Then they basically disappear into their black box, heads down, coding, building, executing for months on end. They communicate very little outwards.
Okay.
Then finally, they emerge from the black box, proudly presenting a finished product that perfectly matches the requirements, as they were originally gathered 9 months ago.
But in those 9 months,
The business environment changed. The market shifted. The customer's internal needs evolved. Maybe a key competitor launched a disruptive product, so the software the team built. Technically, it might be perfect according to the old spec, but strategically, it might be completely useless now.
Wow. So they built the wrong thing perfectly.
Precisely. Imagine a team building a complex data processing engine. It takes them 9 months. During that time, the government changes the primary compliance reporting standard that this engine was supposed to support. If the team stayed in their black box, didn't communicate, didn't check in with stakeholders.
The engine they deliver is instantly non-compliant and possibly worthless.
Exactly. And the remedies seem simple, but it requires discipline, continuous stakeholder participation, and buy-in. You need to be showing progress, demonstrating working software frequently, even if it's imperfect or incomplete. You need those feedback loops.
So you manage expectations and ensure you're still aligned with the current reality.
Yes. Failure to keep stakeholders engaged, informed, and involved continuously is a primary reason why projects get rejected at the finish line, regardless of how well the team thought they executed technically.
Okay, so planning failures, communication stakeholder failures. What's the third major bucket?
This one often points back to the project manager and the overall team environment. Things like incompetent team management, maybe a lack of the required project management expertise on the PM's part, or ineffective decision-making procedures within the project.
This really highlights the PM's role as more than just a taskmaster.
Absolutely. The PM's ability to lead, coordinate, communicate, negotiate, it's paramount. Especially because in many organizations, particularly matrix structures, the project team members don't actually report directly to the PM.
Right, they report to their functional manager, head of development, head of QA, etc. So the PM can't just order them around.
Exactly. This is where the essence of leadership and project management comes in, directly relating to Skill Outcome 3, SO3, about working effectively in teams. Since the PM often lacks that formal hierarchical authority, what we call legitimate power, they have to rely heavily on soft power.
What kinds of soft power?
2 key types are crucial. First, expert power. This comes from the PM's own demonstrable knowledge and competence regarding the project, the technology involved, the business domain, and project management methodologies themselves. People listen when they believe you know what you're talking about.
Okay, credibility through expertise. What's the second type?
Even more critical, arguably, is referent power.
Referent power. How would you explain that to someone who needs to develop it, especially in one of those tricky matrix environments?
Referent power is basically influence that you earn through your personal integrity, your competence, your reliability, your fairness, how you treat people. It's the personal capital, the trust you build with team members, peers, and stakeholders.
Right, it's about relationships.
Deeply. When that senior architect knows you respect their expertise, you won't waste their time with pointless meetings. You actively listen to their concerns, and you consistently follow through on your commitments. They become willing to go the extra mile for you and the project, even though their official boss is someone else.
They follow you because they respect you, not just the title on your door.
Exactly. They trust you. Building that referent power, that relationship equity, is absolutely key to influencing and coordinating people you don't directly manage. It's essential for effective integration.
And that leadership role extends directly into actively shaping the team's dynamics and environment to foster success. Right.
A high-performing project team doesn't just happen by accident. It needs to be deliberately cultivated by the PM. This involves several things.
Like what?
Actively executing the training plan that was developed earlier, making sure everyone has the necessary skills, not just technically, but also in teamwork and communication. Allocating work clearly based on defined roles and responsibilities, and establishing clear accountability often tracked through regular team member progress reports.
Accountability is key. What else?
And then there's the softer side, which is just as important. Establishing a supportive and positive team environment. This means actively engaging in team-building activities doesn't have to be elaborate, sometimes just regular check-ins or social interactions. And, critically, implementing team recognition and rewards.
Why is recognition so important?
Because people need to feel valued and appreciated for their contributions and hard work. Acknowledging milestones, celebrating successes, even small ones, publicly recognizing individuals or the team for overcoming a tough challenge. These things dramatically boost morale, cohesion, and buy-in. A simple pizza lunch after hitting a major baseline target can do wonders for team effectiveness and reinforces those collaboration skills needed to complete the project successfully. Hitting SO3 again. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. We have definitely covered a huge amount of ground today. We went all the way from the highest level, strategic decision-making, picking the right project, justifying it financially, down to the really granular details of planning steps, variance analysis, change control, and quality audits.
Yeah, it really underscores, I think, the absolute vital role of project integration management. It's the glue, right? It connects that initial strategic selection, drives the comprehensive planning. Those 12 steps are key, enables rigorous execution management through constant CSSQ monitoring and formal change control, and ultimately, it demands strong, decisive leadership, often built on that soft power, that influence.
And the knowledge and skills we've dug into today, being able to explain these complex PM concepts, KO1, evaluate tricky project situations, KO2, apply the specific terms and techniques, KO3, these really are the foundational steps. For our listeners, especially those in programs like BCIS 53351, mastering how to manage these multiple interconnected project phases, SO2, and learning to work effectively within a team, SO3, that's how you become the kind of professional who can take a complex idea and actually turn it into tangible, real-world impact.
Absolutely. And it's so important because when you think about it, almost every element of our modern society depends on IT projects succeeding. How hospitals secure patient data, how banks process transactions, how logistics companies move goods around the globe. It all relies on information technology projects being delivered successfully. We are profoundly dependent on this discipline.
It really is everywhere. Okay, so as you, our listeners, reflect on this deep dive, the complexity of integration, the importance of planning, the challenges of execution, here's our final provocative thought for you to chew on.
If every single IT project currently running were to suddenly fail tomorrow, what part of your world, maybe how you order food, how you communicate, how your healthcare is managed, how you get paid, what part would come crashing down first?
It's a sobering question.
The answer, I suspect, is terrifyingly simple.
Mm-hmm.
The parts that were managed the least effectively using the principles we've discussed today.
Behind every app launch, every online order, and every single innovation is IT project management making it possible. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Remember to check the description for resources and hit like or follow if you found this valuable. Until next time, keep exploring a world where ideas become projects and projects shape our future.